Welcome to another episode of PO Pod. I want you to, just close your eyes for a second and transport yourself back to July 24th, 2022.
Oh, wow. Yeah, set the scene.
Right, so picture the legendary Newport Folk Festival in Rhode Island. The crowd is just absolutely buzzing.
It's packed.
Completely packed. Brandi Carlile is on stage, and she's wrapping up this incredible star-studded set that was billed simply as Brandi Carlile and Friends.
Which is already a huge deal.
Exactly. The energy is already sky high.
Mm.
But then, completely unannounced, a 78-year-old woman slowly makes her way onto the stage.
And the place just erupts.
The crowd loses its collective mind. I mean, people are literally weeping in the audience.
Yeah, for good reason.
And the reason they're weeping is that just 7 years prior, this specific woman suffered a devastating brain aneurysm.
A really severe one.
Yeah. It was the kind of massive medical event that left her unable to walk, unable to speak, and, by all logical assumptions, permanently unable to play music ever again.
Right. It seemed like the end of an era.
But yet, here she is. She takes a seat in this big golden chair, and she starts singing. She's playing a solo on her electric guitar, and she completely shocks the entire global music world.
It was incredible.
So today, we are taking a deep dive into the incredibly defiant, totally unpredictable life of that woman, Roberta Joan Anderson. Though you and, the rest of the world probably know her better as Joni Mitchell.
Yeah, and it was a truly monumental moment in music history. And unpacking her story in this deep dive is just so crucial because for a massive segment of the casual listening public, Joni Mitchell is perpetually frozen in time.
Oh, totally. Stuck in the 60s?
Exactly. People picture this ethereal girl with an acoustic guitar and long blonde hair singing Big Yellow Taxi or Woodstock.
Right.
But that image is almost a disservice to her actual legacy. I mean, she is a painter. She's a trailblazer of complex jazz rock fusion.
Yeah.
She's this intensely deep thinker, and you can easily make the case that she is the most important female recording artist of the late 20th century.
Without a doubt.
Her entire journey is a masterclass in constantly tearing down her own image and rebuilding it.
But that freezing of her image is so common, though. Why do you think people get stuck on the 1960s folk singer version of her when her catalog goes to such wild experimental places later on?
Well, I think it comes down to the sheer cultural impact of those early songs. I mean, they became absolute anthems for an entire generation.
That makes sense.
Right. When you write something like Woodstock, which literally defines the counterculture movement of an era, society tends to just lock you in that specific box.
Yeah, you become the poster child.
Exactly. But to understand how she eventually broke out of that box, we really have to look at the physical realities that built her sound from the ground up.
The very beginning.
Yeah. So her childhood was spent moving around Western Canada. Her father was a Royal Canadian Air Force flight lieutenant during World War II.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and they eventually settled in Saskatchewan. And as a kid, she was highly creative, terrible at standard schoolwork, but absolutely obsessed with painting. Naturally, she wanted to play the guitar to accompany her poetry.
As one does.
But her mother detested the guitar. She associated it with, hillbilly music and completely refused to buy one.
Wait, really? She wouldn't let her have a guitar at all?
Nope. So she started on a ukulele instead.
Okay.
Eventually, she scraped together enough to buy a guitar and started teaching herself from a Pete Seeger instruction book. But the real turning point, the event that changed music history, happened at age 9 when she contracted polio.
And we aren't talking about, a mild case where she just stayed in bed for a few days.
Oh, not at all. She was hospitalized for weeks in a polio ward, literally surrounded by children in iron lungs.
That is terrifying.
It was. The physical toll was severe, and the lingering effect of the virus was that it permanently weakened her left hand.
Wow.
Yeah, so when she finally tried to play her guitar again, she realized she literally did not have the physical strength in her fingers to press down and hold the standard chord shapes on the fretboard.
Okay, let's just pause and unpack the mechanics of this.
Yeah.
Because I look at her polio recovery as this incredible, almost forced artistic mutation.
Oh, I love that phrasing.
Right. Think about a painter who suddenly runs out of red, blue, and yellow paint. Most people would just drop the brush and say, well, I guess I can't paint anymore.
Yeah, they'd just give up.
Exactly. If you or I can't physically press down to play a standard C chord, we probably just quit.
Right.
But because she couldn't play normal chords, she decided to fundamentally change the instrument itself. She invented over 50 alternate guitar tunings to compensate for her weakened hand.
Over 50.
Over 50. And she affectionately called them Joni's weird chords. So can you explain to the listener how changing the tuning actually solved her physical problem?
Yeah, absolutely. So imagine a standard guitar tuning. To make a rich, full chord, you usually have to contort your fingers across multiple frets.
It takes a lot of hand strength.
Exactly, using a lot of muscle tension to press the strings down against the wood. What she did was turn the tuning pegs so that when you strum the guitar without pressing any strings down at all,
Like just playing the open strings.
right, just hitting the open strings, it already formed a beautiful, complex chord.
That is brilliant.
It really is. And from there, she only needed to use one or two fingers, sliding them up and down the neck, to create these massive, intricate progressions.
So her greatest physical limitation literally birthed a sound that no one else could replicate.
Precisely. And it wasn't just like a physical cheat code. It completely changed the underlying theory of her music. Because of these unique tunings, she was naturally stumbling into chordal and quintal harmonies.
Okay, wait, let's break that jargon down for the listener. What does it actually mean to play a chordal harmony?
Sure. So traditional folk and pop music is mostly built on chords stacked in thirds.
Okay.
Think of a standard happy-sounding major chord or a sad minor chord. It's very resolved and familiar, you know exactly how it's supposed to feel.
Right, it guides your emotions.
Exactly. But chordal and quintal harmonies are chords built by stacking intervals of fourths or fifths. Sonically, they sound wide open, airy, and a bit ambiguous.
Oh, I see.
They don't tell you exactly how to feel. She also started heavily using pedal points.
What's a feather point?
A pedal point is when you hold one continuous droning bass note while changing the chords on top of it.
Okay.
Think of the hypnotic drone of bagpipes. She was recreating that mesmerizing, droning texture on an acoustic guitar. It was light years ahead of what standard folk singers were just strumming in coffee houses at the time.
It's fascinating that her technical brilliance on the guitar came from a physical deficit. But wait, hold on.
Yeah.
If she's fundamentally known as one of the greatest, most inventive musicians of all time, why did she drop out of the Alberta College of Art in 1964? The sources say she left because the school prioritized technical skill over creativity.
Yeah, they did.
That seems completely backwards for someone who practically invented a new technical language on the guitar.
I mean, it sounds contradictory until you separate technique from expression.
How so?
At the art college, she felt the instructors were just grading students on how perfectly they could mimic a classical form or like draw a bowl of fruit.
Ah, so it's very rigid.
Very. She didn't want to just copy reality. She wanted to express her internal world. That rigid, paint-by-numbers environment felt totally suffocating to her.
I get that.
So at age 20, she drops out and heads east to Toronto, hoping to make it as a folk singer, but the reality she walks into is incredibly bleak.
Yeah, the sources talk about how hard those early years were.
It was brutal. She discovers she is pregnant by her ex-boyfriend from Calgary. She finds herself living in a freezing attic room in Toronto, practically penniless with winter setting in.
Oh, man.
She is literally burning the gap-toothed spindles of her staircase banister just to heat the room.
Wait, burning parts of her own staircase?
Yes, just for warmth. She gives birth to a daughter in February 1965, and unable to provide even basic necessities, she makes the agonizing decision to place the baby for adoption.
I can't even fathom the psychological weight of that, especially considering she kept it a complete secret from the public for almost 30 years.
Yeah, the world didn't know about her daughter until 1993, when a former art school roommate actually sold the story to a tabloid.
That's awful.
It is. They eventually reunited in 1997. But the pain of that adoption fundamentally colored her artistic voice forever. She secretly wrote about it in her haunting track, Little Green.
Oh, wow. I know that song.
Right. But she masked the truth just enough that listeners thought it was just a poetic folk song. She later admitted that the birth of her daughter and the devastating inability to raise her was the exact moment her real songwriting inspiration ignited.
Which brings a whole new layer to her early days in the music scene. Like she's carrying this massive secret grief while trying to hustle for gigs in coffee houses.
Exactly.
She meets and briefly marries an American folk singer named Chuck Mitchell in 1965, which, by the way, is how she acquires the name Joni Mitchell.
Yep, that's where it comes from.
And they move to Detroit. But when she tries to play the established folk circuit, she hits this bizarre wall of gatekeeping.
Oh, the gatekeeping was intense. The folk scene in the 1960s, particularly in places like Toronto's Yorkville neighborhood or the clubs in Detroit, operated on a very strange, unwritten set of rules.
Like what?
Well, the standard practice was to sing traditional, centuries-old folk songs. But veteran singers essentially claimed ownership of this public domain material.
Ownership of public domain songs.
Yes, Joni would get on stage and start singing a traditional ballad, only to be pulled aside afterward and told, "You can't sing that, that's my song, I sing that one."
That's wild.
It was fiercely territorial, and she quickly realized that all the best traditional material was already locked down by established performers.
You know, I was looking at this toxic gatekeeping, and it honestly feels like they did her a massive favor.
Really? How so?
Well, do you think she would have even bothered sitting down to write her own deeply personal original music if the folk establishment had just welcomed her in and let her sing the old covers?
That is a great point. History suggests she probably wouldn't have, at least not as quickly. Once again, a roadblock became a catalyst.
Right.
Locked out of the traditional repertoire, she resolved to just write her own songs.
Yeah.
And the result was an explosion of legendary material.
Yeah.
She wrote absolute classics like Urge for Going, The Circle Game, and Both Sides Now.
Oh, huge song.
Huge. And the crazy part is, these songs became massive chart hits for other artists before she ever got her own record deal.
That's right.
Tom Rush took Urge for Going up the charts. Judy Collins had a top 10 hit with her version of Both Sides Now. Buffy Sainte-Marie was recording her material.
Wow.
Joni was essentially providing the hit fuel for the exact same folk establishment that had initially locked her out.
It's a wild dynamic. She's writing these generation-defining anthems, and other people are getting famous off her brain power. How did she finally step out of the shadows and take control of her own voice?
The breakthrough happens in 1967. She's playing a gig at a club in Florida called the Gaslight South. David Crosby of Crosby, Stills, and Nash fame walks in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he is completely floored by her talent and immediately takes her back to Los Angeles. He helps get her signed to Reprise Records.
Huge turning point.
Definitely. And crucially, Crosby produces her 1968 debut album, Song to a Seagull, and fiercely protects her sound.
What do you mean by protects her sound?
Well, at the time, record labels loved taking acoustic folk singers and slathering their tracks in trendy folk rock, overdubs, heavy drums, electric bird-style guitars.
Oh, right, making it sound very late 60s pop.
Exactly. But Crosby convinced the label to let her record a pure solo acoustic album, preserving those complex alternate tunings we talked about.
And it works. Because by 1970, with her third album, Ladies of the Canyon, she's a legitimate star with a gold record. But then we arrive at 1971, she releases Blue, and the entire landscape of songwriting shifts.
Blue is almost universally considered one of the greatest albums ever recorded. It sits at the top of all-time lists for a reason.
It really does.
The intimacy of that record is actually uncomfortable. Mitchell stripped away every single emotional defense mechanism she had.
Yeah.
She famously described her mental state during the recording sessions as feeling like a cellophane wrapper on a pack of cigarettes.
That is such a vivid image.
Isn't it? She felt completely transparent, like she had absolutely no secrets left to hide from the world, and she couldn't even pretend to be strong.
You know, I think about that cellophane wrapper analogy in the context of our culture today.
How so?
Well, today, we have this whole ecosystem of internet oversharing. Celebrities get on social media and post these long, supposedly raw and vulnerable videos.
Oh, yeah, the Notes app, apologies, and crying selfies.
Exactly. But let's be honest, today, vulnerability is usually a highly curated PR strategy. It's planned out by a team to make an artist seem relatable. But in 1971, pop stars simply did not do that.
They absolutely did not.
They projected glamour and perfection. Joni wasn't performing vulnerability. She was bleeding on the track. She was giving you the messy, ugly, unpolished truth.
That distinction is paramount. She was exploring the mechanics of her own depression and her own romantic failures, admitting to being selfish and lonely in her lyrics.
Right.
She was sacrificing her own psychological comfort for the sake of the art. But in true Joni Mitchell fashion, the very second she perfected that confessional acoustic sound, and the moment the label and the fans started demanding a Blue 2.0,
You bailed.
she actively rejected it and walked away.
I love that defiance. Like, you want more acoustic sadness? Too bad I'm doing jazz.
Pretty much.
But seriously, Why abandon the exact formula that just made her a global icon?
Because she was fundamentally restless. She drops Court and Spark in 1974, which is a massive, complex leap into jazz and rock fusion.
Okay.
She hires a prominent jazz fusion band called the LA Express to back her.
Right.
And the irony is, her deliberate rejection of the safe pop formula results in her best-selling album of all time.
Wow, really?
Yeah, it hits #1, and she scores her only top 10 single on the Billboard Hot 100 with the song Help Me.
That's amazing.
Yet, even standing at the peak of commercial success, she feels the need to escape.
So she literally runs away from it.
She does. In 1976, she drives across the United States entirely alone. And while she's behind the wheel staring at the open highway, she writes the highly experimental album Hejira.
While driving.
Yes, and to match the feeling of a solitary road trip, she needed a completely different sonic landscape. So she starts collaborating with jazz virtuosos, most notably the legendary bass player Jaco Pastorius.
Let's explain why Jaco Pastorius was such a big deal for her sound. Like, what does a fretless bass actually do to a song?
Good question. So on a normal guitar or bass, you have metal frets that lock your fingers into specific, mathematically perfect notes.
Right, the little metal bars on the neck.
Exactly. A fretless bass has a smooth neck like a violin. It allows the player to slide between notes fluidly. When Jaco played, the bass didn't just keep the rhythm, it sang. His bass lines weave around Joni's vocals like a second fluid voice, creating this sparse, atmospheric sound that perfectly mimicked the feeling of driving down an endless, lonely highway.
That's incredible.
It was brilliant, and it caught the ear of jazz royalty. Soon after, the legendary jazz composer Charles Mingus personally reaches out to her.
Wait, Mingus is an absolute titan. Why did he want to work with a former folk singer?
He had heard a sprawling 16-minute epic she composed called Paprika Plains, and he respected her musical mind. They began a collaboration that ultimately became the 1979 album Mingus.
Okay.
Sadly, he passed away from ALS before the project was finished, leaving her to complete it. For her original fan base, this was incredibly confusing.
I can imagine.
They wanted the girl with the acoustic guitar, and here she was putting out dense, challenging jazz albums. It was a massive commercial risk.
But this goes back to her core identity, doesn't it?
Yeah.
She's always self-identified as a painter derailed by circumstance. We have to remember, she painted almost all of her own album covers.
Yes, she did.
She never treated her music like a commercial product coming off a factory assembly line. She was painting with sound.
Exactly.
If a canvas needed chaotic colors, weird jazz textures, or fluid bass lines, she just threw them on there. She didn't care what the record label wanted to sell or what radio stations wanted to play.
Painting with sound perfectly captures her ethos. And as the decades passed, her actual physical instrument, her vocal cords, began to change their colors too.
Oh, right.
If you listen to her early 60s records, she has this soaring, bird-like soprano. But by the 1990s and 2000s, it drops significantly into a dusky, wide-ranging contralto.
What caused such a dramatic shift in her voice?
Well, she attributed the deepening of her voice to several factors. The long-term effects of polio, vocal nodules, and a compressed larynx.
Okay.
However, it is also a well-documented fact that she started smoking at age 9 and remained a notoriously heavy smoker for most of her life.
Age 9, wow.
Yeah. But instead of trying to hide the aging of her voice or artificially pitch it up, she leaned directly into it.
She embraced it.
Completely. In 2000, she released an album called Both Sides Now, where she recorded jazz standards and remakes of her own early hits. She had the arrangements transposed down to fit her new, soulful alto range, backed by a lush symphony orchestra.
I can imagine that singing a song she wrote in her 20s about the mysteries of life carries a much heavier, more profound emotional resonance when sung by a woman who has actually lived through those decades.
Oh, absolutely. It's totally, completely different.
But, as much as we celebrate her artistry, we cannot pretend her path is a straight, flawless line. She is a deeply complicated person, and we have to impartially look at the controversies she sparked.
We do, because it's a significant part of her historical record. The most intense controversy of her career surrounds the cover art for her 1977 double album, Don Juan's Reckless Daughter.
Right.
On the cover, Mitchell appeared in blackface, portraying an alter ego she named Art Nouveau, styled as a black pimp.
That is a startling choice for any era. How did she possibly explain that?
Well, according to her own accounts, the character was inspired by a black man who had complimented her on the street in Los Angeles.
Okay.
For decades, even in interviews as late as 2017, she defended her use of blackface, framing it as a tribute to the man and an exploration of a different persona.
But the backlash must have been severe.
Yes. Critics heavily condemned the act as racist, pointing out the deeply offensive, painful history of blackface in entertainment. And what is particularly notable is how her management is dealing with this legacy today.
What do they do?
In 2024, the album art on streaming platforms and physical reissues was just quietly swapped out. The original image was replaced with an unrelated outtake photo from 1985 showing Mitchell's face seemingly inside a wolf's mouth.
Wow. Was there a statement?
No, there was no official explanation from her team, no public statement of apology or context. Just a silent erasure of the original cover.
See, this is exactly why we can't give in to the modern urge to sand down the edges of historical figures until they become easily digestible heroes. We want our icons to fit perfectly into our modern moral frameworks. But Joni Mitchell stubbornly refuses to fit into anyone's pre-packaged ideological box. She does things that offend people. She speaks her mind without a filter.
Completely filterless.
She publicly called the music industry a cesspool. She pulled all her music off Spotify in 2022 to protest COVID misinformation standing in solidarity with Neil Young, which cost her a fortune in streaming revenue.
It was a huge financial hit.
Massive. She even outright rejected the label of feminist. She stated she didn't want to form a posse against men, but would rather just go toe-to-toe with them on her own merits. She is fiercely, relentlessly independent.
That independence is the absolute through line of her existence. She makes her own rules, whether it's inventing a new guitar tuning, abandoning pop for jazz, or managing her own public relations.
Yeah.
Which finally brings us full circle to the medical crisis we started with, the brain aneurysm in 2015.
Right, because we left her sitting in a golden chair, triumphantly returning to the stage at Newport in 2022. But getting there couldn't have been easy.
The recovery was grueling beyond belief. She had to undergo intensive daily physical therapy. By 2018, she was just relearning the basic mechanics of walking.
Well, just walking.
Yeah. But the true catalyst for her recovery was communal. In 2017, she started hosting these monthly music sessions at her home in Laurel Canyon. They became affectionately known as the Joni Jams.
The Joni Jams.
Brandi Carlile helped organize them, and soon, an incredible roster of artists started showing up just to play music in Joni's living room. We are talking about legends like Elton John and Paul McCartney.
So you just have Paul McCartney and Elton John casually jam in your living room.
Exactly. But it wasn't just like a Hollywood party. In this joyful, deeply collaborative environment, music literally became her physical therapy.
That's beautiful.
Surrounded by peers who adored her, her spirits lifted. She slowly began to sing along during these sessions. She retaught her fingers how to play the guitar. The communal power of those Joni Jams was the medicine that brought her back to the stage in 2022.
And it paid off in such a public way.
It did. And the momentum didn't stop there. The live recording of that Newport set won a Grammy for Best Folk Album in 2024. And in 2026... she won another Grammy for Best Historical Album for her Asylum Years archives.
And she's still using her platform to make statements. Like, I saw that she wore an ICAET pin on her lapel to that 2026 Grammy ceremony, protesting U.S. immigration and customs enforcement policies.
She's still entirely herself.
Exactly. Plus, the Juno Awards in Canada announced she is receiving a Lifetime Achievement Award in 2026. This isn't just a comeback. It's a complete reclamation of her power.
It is arguably the most triumphant communal comeback in the history of popular music.
It really is. So to you listening, as we wrap up this deep dive into her life, I want to leave you with a slightly different thought.
Okay.
We've talked about how her limitations, polio, a broken heart, and aneurysm fueled her greatest breakthroughs. But let's look at the environment that allowed her to thrive.
Right.
In today's music industry, which is so obsessed with algorithmic perfection, TikTok virality, and safe, focus group bets, you have to wonder, would a modern Joni Mitchell even be allowed to exist?
That is a tough question.
If a young artist today constantly shifted genres, deliberately alienated their fan base, demanded total creative control, and refused to play the PR game, would this system support them?
Probably not.
Or are we currently missing out on future geniuses because the modern machine no longer tolerates that kind of messy, uncompromised evolution? It's something to think about the next time you hit shuffle. Thanks for listening to PPL Pod. Keep tuning in for more stories worth knowing.